It's exciting times with the brand new Granblue Fantasy Relink patch having just dropped. It's bringing new content like the 2 brand new characters that we can play that look particularly great, brand new quests to try, a whole new load of sigils, and the ever appreciated quality of life and character balance changes. So in this video, we're going to go over all of it, including how you can unlock the brand new characters and what they do. This is a really great patch, so if you haven't been playing in a while, we do recommend that now is the time to jump back in. First, let's talk about the new features and the general stuff that's been introduced in this new patch. One of the biggest things they've added in is that every character has a brand new character specific sigil available, increasing the pool available to us for builds, and some of them are pretty spicy, adding damage to certain scenarios or moves to that character. The interesting part of the new sigils are that they all have enhanced damage on them, and this is something that will bypass the damage cap, similar to War Elemental, making this essential if you want to push the damage ceiling even further on your build. For example, on the extreme side of things, Gandagoza's new sigil enhances his damage dealt by Raging Fist, but it does take longer to charge. The people that are maining him are seeing some big numbers with this sigil, so these are definitely something that you should try out for your main character. In addition to this, there are new non-character specific sigils that were added in, which are mostly focused around improving your defensive stats. You can purchase these at the Knickknack Shack using quest or monster parts. For example, one of the new sigils is Greater Aegis, which seems to grant you even more HP at its max level compared to the base version of the skill. Alongside this have been a whole host of new quality of life features. They've made it so you can see when you've hit the damage cap on your damage number that pops up to make things a bit clearer, and what you want to look out for is these little yellow slashes behind the number itself, as you can see in this example. Now that this has been implemented, it will make testing things a bit easier, and you'll be able to see which sigils are being wasted in your build as you take things on and off to see if you're hitting the cap or not. This will be useful as the developers have made a number of balance changes for the characters, and it looks like the theme of it is to actually increase the damage of most of the characters for their certain moves that felt underwhelming, along with various bug fixes for moves that weren't working as intended. For example, they've increased the damage cap on Percival's Rotor Whirble, as well as his charge attacks, which is massive as this is where a lot of his damage comes from. It will be interesting to see how this changes our builds, as we are likely going to need to swap a few things around to accommodate these new moves that previously weren't so great, but now have become must picks for the increased damage they're outputting. Another good change for all characters is that they have increased the radius of the stun damage, which is applied after you perform a perfect guard, which will be very useful for one of the 2 new quests. These new quests are vital to unlocking the new characters, as they provide a way to farm the new Revenant medallions as well as the Supreme Weapon Essence. You will need 30 of the Revenant medallions to craft 1 Supreme Weapon Essence, and you will need 3 of these essences to buy the new special crewmate card, which will unlock either Seofon or Tweyen. Luckily though, there are 2 ways to farm this, an easier but slower way and a harder but quicker way. First is the easy version at extreme difficulty, and it's called Gulp ... so these are the rumored monsters. This has you battling a ton of flying eyeball monsters called Ahriman. To my understanding, you will be very familiar with these if you played the Granblue mobile game. The aim is to kill 130 of them for all of the side objectives, but more of course will be better. They also drop a ton of fortitude crystals, both medium and large, as well as level 4 sigils, so this is actually quite a nice crystal farm while you're farming for those medallions anyway. In this quest, make sure to use the 2 cannons and charge the shots to defeat the waves of Ahriman really easily. This is, however, super slow to get the actual medallions, as you only get like 2 or 3 per run, and these are only a reward item, not a drop item. But luckily we have the hard version at proud difficulty to defeat a second new monster added in the update, but this time it's a full boss. This quest is to defeat the Behemoth, and it's just 2k power behind the Lucilius fight. However, we did find this much easier, quicker and faster to farm compared to Lucilius, so if you have beat him already, this should not really be a problem. This quest is amazing to farm for the new characters, as you not only get between 5 and 20 medallions per run based on your luck, as they can drop in the quest rewards, but you also get a guaranteed Supreme Weapon Essence on your first clear and a chance to get them on the reward screen as well as from the drops, so it's pretty good if you're lucky. You can also break his horns to get a new item called the Crown of Lament, and this is required to craft the new character's second weapon, and you can get Azurite Splendors as a drop if you're very lucky, and I actually got got one of these while I was farming, so it's a very nice bonus. If you can complete this quest, it's definitely the faster of the two to unlock the new characters, but again, it requires you to be able to beat the Behemoth, but if you're already at the very end game fighting Lucilius, it shouldn't be an issue. We will also have some very helpful tips for you later on in the video, but first we need to go over the new characters and their abilities. Seofon is all about summoning spirit swords and his avatar to attack with him. You have a gauge which is split into two segments. On the left is the avatar gauge, which builds up with your combo finishes and link attacks. On the right is your sword shine gauge, which will fill up as you perform combos while the avatar is summoned, and this will buff your skills and attacks as you fill it up. I'm definitely going to butcher the name of these skills, so please ignore the fact that I will probably say each one incorrectly. Barrido is a fast lunging attack, which looks really cool and has this follow-up explosion. It's basically a gap closer that deals more damage with your joint avatar attacks, and I really like the way this one looks, and of course gap closers are great on any melee character. Infinito Crieri will summon a barrage of spirit swords on the enemy, which will deal additional damage with more swords if the sword shine level is high enough, and I love the way this one looks, especially if you have the sword shine level built. It's just a visually awesome attack. Rotura is a quick backwards dodge and then a follow-up leap attack forwards, which deals high stun damage, and as with many of Seofon's abilities, the higher your sword shine level, the more hits it will deal. So it's nice to have a stun skill option. Prysian de Armas will unleash a wave of awesome looking energy that does damage and slows enemies, and it will deal more damage the higher your sword shine level. Obviously, slowing an enemy can be really good in certain phases, like right after a break, to let your team get a ton of DPS off. Despedazar is a swift series of slashes on an enemy that does more hits with a higher sword shine level, and it's a really fun and awesome looking skill, especially when your gauge is built up. But then for your buffs, we have two really interesting ones and one that I'm not a big fan of. Inspira Zeon, oddly enough, is a self buff that gives you hostility to draw aggro on you and a small 30% defense buff, as well as debuff immunity if your sword shine level is high enough. Honestly, I'm not too sure about this one. However, the next two have insane potential. Tempesta will grant you critical rate and attack up of 30 to 50% based on your sword shine level. However, this also maxes out your avatar gauge, which is pretty huge and fundamental to his playstyle, so this is a must pick for sure. Then we have 7 stars Brilliance, which has a very long charge time, but when complete, will max out the entire party's SBA gauge. This sounds amazing, but it does have a wait time at the start of battle, so you can't start a fight by using this. It also has a very long cooldown in general, and you can be interrupted out of it, but from my training room testing, it just interrupts you and allows you to recast it with a restarted timer. And then we have Tweyen, a ranged archer. She's all about rapidly loosing arrows while being highly mobile, dishing out damage, and excelling at debuffing enemies. Her attacks and skills build up her ultra sight level, which lets her lock on to single or multiple targets to rapidly shoot a bunch of locked on arrows. She also has a self buff after doing her SBA, allowing her to deal more damage with her skills and apply paralysis. For her skills, she has Depravity, where she fires a rapid stream of arrows that you can hold down to prolong the barrage, which will inflict attack down, defense down, burn, poison, and slow on enemies in that order, a massive amount of debuffs for one skill. With 2 Crown Strife, she will jump into the air and fire a volley of arrows, which is pretty awesome looking, but also increases the duration of debuffs on an enemy, which is greatly paired with the previously mentioned Depravity skill or the paralysis from her SBA buff. It does, however, start battle on cooldown and can only be used once. Clincher also synergizes well as it fires a single powerful arrow that deals even more damage based on the number of debuffs an enemy has, making these all work together really well. But she does have more defensive or utility skills as well, such as Valiant Weave, where she leaps backwards directionally and shoots 3 arrows in front of her. You also have Wheel of Death to fire arrows all around you as you spin in place, and it will launch foes if it hits them. And with her Lethal Rain skill, she rains down arrows over a wide area that deal damage and high stun damage. She does have 2 self buffs though. One is a 40% attack buff that also gives Mirror Image, very useful to nullify those attacks against you. And she has Peerless Eye, which gives Stout Heart and Deadshot, which will boost your Ultra Sight gauge gain. As we mentioned before though, with the 2 new quests added in for us to grind the materials to unlock these characters, we highly recommend farming the Behemoth quest and try to get S++, as this quest is much faster than farming the Rumored Monsters quest. As we said, when you complete it for the first time, you get an entire essence, which is definitely worth it at least once. But here are some things to help you aim for that S++. You will want to focus on doing the side objectives, and one of those is to get 10 perfect guards. One of the easier ways to do this is to stand still in one of the AoE circles that Behemoth puts down and time your guard press just as the circle grows and reaches the outer radius of the AoE and then detonates. That's when you press guard to trigger a perfect guard and add it to the side objective. This quest also has a limit on the amount of times you can go into the critical state, so if you didn't already know, your best bet to actually do this one will be to just get good, or use the auto revive sigil, as the auto revive will allow you to bypass the critical state, allowing you to die and revive without it being added to the sub goal, meaning you aren't penalized. As said before, you can break the horns on this monster, so make sure to hit its head during this fight, and a great time to do this is during link time, and link time is actually very easy to build up because you can do link attacks on the trash mobs that spawn in this quest. Of course, the old SBA chain method seems to work pretty well here, as it causes the monster to remain stationary for a very long period of time while you wail on it, but you can make the choice to do this or not, as the chain burst will also do significant damage to the monster's health bar. One of the bigger moves that Behemoth will do is a massive explosion that happens after he is winding down from his initial bloodthirst phase after first going into overdrive. This is the main thing that will probably clap you in the fight, but to avoid it you actually can perfect guard it or just run out of the AoE circle, and that is how you bypass this skill. Tell us if you have any other tips down below so we can all learn together as a community, and are you planning to play Tweyen or Seofon? I would love to know down below. Subscribe for more daily gaming videos, news and guides coming your way soon.